Okay, we're waiting for just a second. Commissioner Dietz is getting ready to walk in the room here in just a few minutes. We'll be getting started momentarily. I just wanted to give everybody an update so you'd know what's going on.
Just out of curiosity, do we have an ordinance about dogs barking? I know we have a noise ordinance, but is there one specific to? Okay. One of my neighbors, they're actually moving from up the hill because their neighbors won't keep the dogs quiet. Now I think there's other reasons.
It's specifically excluded.
What?
It's specifically excluded.
Well, I just told her, I said, you know, just try, I said, oh, I try to be good neighbors. I learned that from Brian. He, you know, try to work it out. That's what I told her. So then about a month later, she says, we're moving. But actually their family lives somewhere else.
Are we live yet?
Oh, we're not gonna do that. Oh, my comments are
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Everyone is here now. Commissioner Stripling will be participating remotely with us today. So be careful. We see a steering wheel there.
Yes, sir.
Keep your eyes on the road. And we'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to our manager to walk us through these various items today on the work session agenda.
Yes, so the first item for discussion is we have Daniel Mandarin here, the TWASA director, executive director. This is a follow-up to a request to have Mr. Mandarin come and give a report. I did indicate to Commissioner Jones that specifically you were interested in an update on horse pasture projects. So having said that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Mandarin.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. Well, thanks for having me. One day we'll get to do this in person, hopefully. So like Don mentioned, he just asked for kind of a TWASA update and then a focus on the horse pasture project. So at every one of our monthly business meetings, I provide what I call an organizational update. And it's kind of a rundown on current projects that we're working on or hot topics. And it's, you know, kind of aside from, it's like a director's update, I guess you'd say. So I'm just going to do that. I have no problem. I don't know the typical format in y'all's meeting, but feel free to jump in and ask me questions. I'm pretty knowledgeable about most of these topics, or I better be. And I'll make this brief. So please interrupt. As far as TWASA goes with COVID, we're still keeping our lobby closed. I feel that we're, with a small staff, we're trying to be extra careful to make sure that we focus on providing water and wastewater and not losing our employees. So we've been still behind closed doors and maintaining the same service with regards to providing water and wastewater. That's been very well received with our customers in the community. We're offering, you know, bill pay and pay by phone, and you know, certainly anyone can call us, and we've seen a lot of progress with folks using our website and those alternate payment methods. So if you're aware of folks that have any issues whatsoever, please tell them that, you know, everything's still normal behind the doors. It's just that our lobby's closed. One more COVID related thing, and you guys are in the know as well because Jackson County Health Department is the benefactor of this grant. But we're participating in doing wastewater samples from weekly for, I believe it's 18 weeks. It's 4 months. No, it's a 4-month study. So we're sending data in from our largest wastewater treatment facility. Every Sunday through Monday, we collect data straight out of the sewer intake at the entrance to our plant. and then we send that sample to a lab in Wisconsin. And so the health department can certainly speak to that data way more than I can, but it's just letting you know that that's one thing on our plate right now is to try to help with those efforts and get that data for the data and the lab to process. So any questions on that before I go into actual projects?
Which treatment plant is that coming from, Daniel?
So that's our main, so the one on North River Road.
Oh, okay.
That one, that's our largest facility. It collects basically from the hospital down to Jackson Paper, and then from the whole Cullowhee area to the plant. So that's the largest population that we could sample from.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I think Western's also doing, or they were at the end of the semester, they were doing something similar on a single dorm. Now, I don't know if they're still planning on doing that for the spring or not. We participated in the pilot study also, which was back in August. And an issue there was that it just took too long to get the data. So we would submit samples, and then our part's over. But the health department and the folks that can use that data, it was taking up to 2 weeks to get the results. And by that time, that data is old news. So the push right now, and I'm getting weekly updates, and so is the health department, from the data folks, which are a group called Mathematica. They're able, working with the lab, to get the lab results within 2 days, and then within another day or two, they can get the kind of an update to the health departments. So, basically a 4-day turnaround. And they say that data is beneficial up to 10 days in advance. So we can know on all we're doing is taking the samples. The folks that can interpret that data can greatly benefit over a week in advance of what they're seeing with other testing parameters. So pretty neat stuff, I think. Any questions on that? That's all I really know, but I could certainly take a stab. Okay, I'll move on. So now I'm just going to talk briefly about some projects that we have going on. As most of you know, I've been here since March, and there were a lot of things that were kind of on the plate for TWASA, but in the construction stage, maybe not so much. So one of my goals has been to just kind of all those funded projects that we've either got grants or loans or TWASA funds or a combination, is to go ahead and move forward with those projects and get those behind us, because the longer we wait on those, the tougher it is on the budget side of things, because construction costs continue to go up. So the first one is the old Silva plant, or the plant that's just below our office here. We're doing a complete renovation to that facility. We did have that in a phased approach, and for funding reasons have decided to consolidate that into a single project. We'll be bidding that project in the next hopefully month. And so if you're having to go around Dillsboro or around Harold's by the road that goes by the Appalachian Women's Museum in Monteith Park, then hopefully in the next few months you'll see some construction progress there. Another project I'm extremely excited about is we've been working with grant funds to update all of our asset inventory and an assessment of all of our assets. So an engineering firm has done a very in-depth assessment of our whole entire system and have prepared a report that's in draft form right now. They'll be reporting to our board next week at next week's business meeting.
Can you speak just a little louder, please?
I can try. I feel like I'm yelling. Let me, how about now? Does that sound a little better if I get a little closer?
It does.
Okay, I'll try not to mumble either.
You're doing good. I just can't hear.
Thank you. So anyway, this asset assessment is I just got the draft report, and I didn't really know what exactly to expect. And it is a thorough, very well done report from what I can tell so far. Just really excited moving forward that that we have this tool for planning of future projects. It also kind of brought us up to speed with GIS and mapping. So we've had a collection of different maps over the years based on paper documents or our own locating efforts. And this project is kind of bringing us up to the 2020-21 era, and we'll have a new locating software and mapping. So I'm super excited about that. We're getting ready to change a couple pump stations. So our largest pump station, which is the Jackson Paper pump station directly across from Jackson Paper, and in conjunction with the smaller pump station behind Speedy's, that also will be bidding in the next couple of months. These are just older pump stations that are in need of some rehabilitation. So on both sides of the new Oyster House, you'll see some work to revamp those. That'll be a welcome thing also prior to the R5600-107 project that DOT does. So just having newer pump stations and the ability to possibly not be affected as much by that 107 project would be helpful. Just a couple more. Cowan Valley community has been after a better consolidated water system with TWASA for many years. That one, after many, many years, I think in a meeting the other day, I was told that the Cowan Valley community has been trying to do something since 1988. We had a meeting regarding easements on them getting a new water system that they're paying for. So there's a loan from the state that the 22 existing customers in Cowan Valley are going to collectively, there'll be a loan payment on their bills every month. But that one is finally going to happen and should be bidding by sometime in April is my hope, if we can get all the easements in the next 30 to 60 days. So I know they're excited about that one.
Daniel,
Yes,
is that project, is that only water?
just water for that one. That's they right now have a master meter down on Old Settlement or Ash Settlement. I get the names confused. This basically upgrades the mains inside Cowan Valley to our standards and public water supply standards, and replaces a lot of kind of a hodgepodge of water mains, honestly. And then they'll have individual meters at the residences instead of a master meter.
Good.
Yeah, it'll be a good project. So I've got a couple more, and then I'll get to horse pasture. Sorry. So some of you may have seen some work in Cullowhee, right across from the western entrance over towards the Cullowhee Credit Union. And TWASA started the Little Savannah water and sewer project around in October sometime, I believe it was. And the intent of that project is to increase our capacity. We've reached capacity on our water and sewer along that Little Savannah growth corridor. So we're actually having to install a larger sewer main, a gravity sewer main under 107. So that's right at 200 feet of a tunneling and bore project that's had to go from Western under 107 about 30 feet deep, and has been a bear, quite honestly. They completed that bore last week, and so we're hoping to wrap that project up so we'll have better water and sewer abilities for that Cullowhee area within 2 to 3 weeks from now. So I'm excited to wrap that project up. Last before the horse pasture. Many of you are aware of the Allen Street slide that we're monitoring pretty regularly in Silva. So we've worked a lot with the town of Silva. They're working with geotechnical engineers, and when they only had one slide, they were talking with some contractors, and now they've kind of had to take a step back and reevaluate when they had the second slide start. We've had a water line break in the middle of that, but fortunately we're able to do a bypass and we've had to do a sewer repair recently. So we're just monitoring the slide because it continues to move, and we're on the proactive side instead of the reactive side. So I'm excited that we're not having any spills or anything like that. We're able to maintain service. However, once Silva does begin some repairs, we'll get the opportunity to go in and replace our lines with the same size lines we would prefer. Right now, we're doing a bypass with a 2-inch water line instead of the preferred 8-inch water line. We're able to make it work, but I'm excited when we can get our normal hydraulics back. So that's it on all the all the non-horse pasture projects. So then if anybody has any questions on those, I can certainly take them.
Great. Commissioner Jones has a question.
Good day, Daniel. The increased capacity for the work on the Dillsboro plant, is that just getting up to state of the art, or is that increasing capacity?
It does not increase capacity. We've just got a lot of components of that plant that are desperately in need of replacement. Quite honestly, it's one of our best working plants, but we're having to baby it along a lot. So our discharge permit, or the amount of treated water we can put in the Scotts Creek, is where it is. So we did not expand that. We're just replacing all the components. Sorry for the long answer.
Okay, Commissioner Striblin, do you have a question? Well, just say you need to unmute.
It always goes to me by itself. I'm just wondering, for the future of Tuasa, how far past the college do y'all plan on going?
So the way our bylaws are set up, when we were formed in 1992 with all the forming entities, there's quite a process as far as extensions and funding for extensions and that sort of thing. So our system kind of grows on for the most part, on an as-needed basis with regards to developers' needs, or whoever's needs, the customer. So it really just varies on funding for where those dollars come from. For us just to do an expansion, we, per our bylaws, only spend 20% of the cost needed for an expansion project. Extension project. There's the difference. So it has to be a collaborative effort between who needs the service, and then we can work with funding agencies and whatnot. But there's quite the process. So it's on a
Okay.
That's not a direct answer, but it really varies on the user end.
And then where does the other 80% come from? From grants?
It could be, or it could be from so if a developer were to need something that we don't currently service, then they pay for it. And then if, per the bylaws of Tuasa, if we can recoup our expenses of that 20% within 5 years, then we pay the 20%. If we can't, then we can't even do the 20%. And that's just per the forming bylaws.
I see. Okay.
If you guys are ready, I'm certainly will take any questions.
Any other questions about any of these items before he moves on to horse pasture? Okay, go ahead, Daniel.
Okay, so horse pasture has been something the cashier's community is certainly been looking forward to. Back in August of 2020, McGill Associates, the consultant for this project, was able to wrap up all of their plans for submittal to both funding agencies and regulatory agencies. So those took a while. There's multiple agencies. There's erosion control, stormwater, obviously sewer, both on the plant side and the collection side. There's DOT, there's USDA, there's Golden Leaf, there's me, we review it as well. So those started trickling in late fall, and we've received everyone's comments by now, with exception a little bit to the DOT, which is quite tricky on the collection side. So we've been in multiple meetings with the DOT to make sure that we're doing our road crossings the way they want and not impacting traffic and that sort of thing. The goal is in the next 2 months, or by the end of February, to try to have a completed set of revised plans that goes back to all of those agencies to get their sign off. So the idea is to get everyone's comments, make one set of revised plans, and then distribute those to all of those agencies at one time, which is the goal for in the next 45 days or so. This review should be a lot quicker because they've already done their initial review and now they're only looking at it for comments or comment replies. So then sometime in March, we're hoping to advertise to bidders and then have approximately a 60-day bid time. So that would put us in May for a received bid or a bid opening. And then we move from there with regards to funding and all that good stuff to get the construction started. That's on the construction end. They may have any construction related questions or the time frame. And then I'll speak about the allocation.
Is that the first phase? I remember is that 125,000 capacity?
That's correct. So I should probably have given some background there. We had a little bit of allocation left until December, actually, for the on the existing Cashers plant. And we released 20,000 a long time ago, and it just kind of trickled away until December. And now all we have left is a little bit of capacity for some failed systems. So if there's a failed septic system, that's the only way you could get a hookup right now currently. The phased approach to the horse pasture plant is we have a total discharge permit for the horse pasture river of 0.495 million, or just under 500,000 gallons. That is a 3-part permit. So 125,000 gallons the first phase, 125,000 the second, and then almost 245,000 on that third phase. So all of this that I talk about time frame is for that first phase.
Thank you.
With regards to that, so there becomes the need for how to determine allocation or how folks can get allocation for those 125 or so thousand gallons once the horse pasture is complete. Oh, I didn't say that. So that's a 21-month construction project. So by contract, we'll have 21 months in there. I want to have some kind of contingency in there. So I'm just telling in my mind, that's a 24-month project. The goal that TWASA is working on this spring in the board of directors is we're not at liberty to sell or allocate any gallons to a plant that is not yet under construction. So by May, when we would have the ability, although we couldn't realize the first gallon until the plant's done, we would have the ability to do sewer allocations. So the goal, and that's really ramped up just starting earlier this week, is for TWASA to figure out whether it be, and I'm just speculating because we've not nailed this down with the board, whether it be some type of ranking system or some kind of window when folks get signed up, or could there possibly be a certain percentage to residential and a certain percentage to commercial? All of that is being hashed out and will be for the next few months with TWASA before they release a new cashier's allocation policy that will speak to how folks can get that capacity. So no capacity has been guaranteed or allocated to any group or individual for the new plant. And we've been directed from the state not to until you've actually got a construction project and break ground. So that's it in a nutshell. Of course, I'll address questions.
Any other questions about what Daniel's presenting?
And I welcome this, by the way, also. So, I mean, anytime you guys, or if it's to give a broad overview like this, or if you just want me to come and talk about a specific project or issue, yeah, absolutely reach out. It's my community too, so I welcome it.
Anybody before we close this out?
Good deal. Well, it's good seeing all you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm going to sign off. You guys don't need me for anything else, right?
Thank you, Dan.
Have a good one.
Next we have Tim Mood, the Green Energy Park Director, and we also have Chad Parker back here on Public Works Directors. And the purpose of today's discussion in regards to the new kilns, and what I have enclosed in your packets is the quotes that were provided to build out the new kilns at the Green Energy Park, basically behind on the backside of the SRC, the existing SRC. What I've asked Mr. Mood to do is to just come to the board, and this is something that's been brought up during the bidding process and the development of this whole project. And I asked Mr. Mood to just come to the board and basically just maybe give a brief history of the existing town, and then we can just talk about the quotes that we have and just see if there's any questions from the board. Currently, the funds that are shown here on these quotes are currently allocated and budgeted. So there's not necessarily a request before the board. This is information purposes only. And the only thing is there's an action from the board if you wish for us to do something different than what's already done. So having said that, I'll just, Tim, if you go ahead and unmute and maybe just give a little bit of history of the council, if you would.
Okay, can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Can you speak loud? No.
I'll try to. I don't have much of a voice yet back, but I'll try and be as loud as I can. I'll just give you all a quick rundown on the history of these kilns. I'll talk a little bit about the gentleman that we've got to design it and build it for us. And I'll talk about the users and what the new ones are going to look like. And please, if you have any questions, just throw them out there at me. So initially, we built this kiln because, well, it was part of our.
Yeah, hang on one second.
Okay.
Our speaker system here is not that great, so we just cannot hear you. Hang on one second.
Okay. Do you want me to? I could drive over.
No. Is that might work?
Oh, that helped last time when you put that mic in front.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Right now.
How about now?
I can hear you.
That's better. Thank you. That's better. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. So we wanted to build this ceramics kiln originally because there were no public access ceramic kilns anywhere in the area. These wood kilns, they provide a different finish and texture on the pots. It's very different than if you fired in a gas or electric kiln. And early on, talking with Joan Bird over at Western, who was the ceramics instructor then, she pointed out that most of her students couldn't go on and do art for a living because they didn't have access to kilns and other equipment. So we felt like it was a good opportunity for us to be able to help out members of the community that way. So in the mid 2011, we got a grant from the Conservation Fund, which is a group out of Chapel Hill, and they provided us with about $8,400 for the kiln itself, and then some other funds for running electric to the building and a few other things.
Then in conjunction with that, Western provided $2,000, which they used to pay the gentleman Preston who designed the kiln, and then he led the construction as a workshop for Western, excuse me, for Western alumni and students and staff. So we started that construction right at the tail end of 2011, and then we had the kiln finished in early 2012. We had about 20 people participated in that construction effort. It took about 3-4 weeks from start to finish to get that all together. And since that time, the kiln's been very successful, I think. We fired that at least once a month for the last 9 years. And in probably the last 3 or 4 years, as more word's gotten out that, excuse me, that this is available, we probably fired it twice a month then. So I would say we have over 125 firings in that kiln. So it's been very well used. That main kiln that we have is a 100 cubic foot kiln, and they just fire that with wood, and basically the ash piles up inside there, then the ash melts, and it leaves a glossy finish on the pottery, and then the actual chemicals that are coming out of the wood, the silica and phosphorus and things like that, they contribute to the colors that lay on the wood. So it's a very different process than just you know, taking a cup and painting it a certain color and putting it in a kiln and having it come back out that way. We also have a smaller 30 cubic foot kiln that's called a salt kiln, in which it's a much shorter firing period. They just put their work in there, fire it up to temperature very quickly, and then throw a bunch of salt inside there. And that gives a completely different finish than the regular wood kilns. We generally fire these with scrap wood that we get from a small sawmill that the Heights organization operates out there. We also can buy scrap lumber from Mr. Morgan's sawmill over there in Webster. And also there's a lot of times when the county has to cut down trees that have, you know, landed on different properties. And particularly for things that aren't any good for other people's firewood, like greenwood or pine or, you know, other sappy softwoods like that. That's fine. We can burn all of that in our kilns. So we're able to get all of that at either no or very low cost. And then sometimes the people that fire the kilns will bring in their own firewood as well.
Again, hey, I tell you what, we got the quotes here. How about giving a little bit of history of Mr. Preston Colbert?
Sure. So Preston is the gentleman that's given us this quote. He's a graduate from Western. He graduated there with a Bachelor in Fine Arts, and then he went on to Ole Miss and got a master's in fine arts, specifically in ceramics. And since that time, he spent a lot of time apprenticing with different kiln builders across the country. Don Reitz is a very noted kiln builder out in Arizona that he spent a couple years with. And then Preston went on and just developed a business for himself of building kilns professionally. He just recently finished one with Blue Ridge Community College. He's done a couple other community colleges in the area. And I'd also like to point out that he's the only kiln builder that is on the state approved vendors list. So if you're a school or college and you want somebody to build your kiln, you have to go through that list, and he's the only person available there. He's a very knowledgeable gentleman. He's really easy to work with. He's very supportive of what we're doing at the Green Energy Park and always has been. Since the time that he built that first kiln, his design skills have improved quite a bit. So this new kiln that we're going to get from him is going to be state of the art. It's going to be much better than our older one was. And he also can put it together in a lot shorter time period instead of a 3 or 4 weeks. I think he's only looking at about 3 or 4 days because he can build the framework somewhere else. Excuse me. He can build a framework at his own shop and then bring it up to our facility and put it in place and then start stacking all of his brick in there. Do we have any questions about that?
So just real quick, if I can, and I'll jump in here and spare you a little bit of, I know your voice is gone. So the main purpose is I wanted him to come before the board and see if there's any questions about the build out of the kiln, who we're using. I think it's important for the public to know that the history of how it's been built before and how we're talking about building it today. Also, it's important, I think that's a key component to talk about Preston here, Mr. Tolbert being the only certified kiln builder on the state approved list. And so these are things I think it's important for the public to know prior to us going out and building the facility. And then the final thing was that I know that previously there's some conversation about volunteer labor and how the kiln was previously built, and are there opportunities today to do so? And so a couple of things that my understanding, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, ultimately the previous kiln, we had to purchase the brick. We actually had to have it designed, and we had to have the frame built out, and we had costs associated with the previous kiln. Now the costs are not necessarily as high as what we're talking about here. And basically the volunteer labor that we were able to get a hold of last time mainly existed around this amount here that for this new cost of about $3,000. And so at this point, I guess what we're trying to show is that with or without volunteer labor, which there's not necessarily people lined up to volunteer, this kiln is going to cost approximately about the same amount of money and also draw out the build out over a period of time. And so that's one of the things I think it's important for the public to know and the commissioners to know that the person that's been selected has a history, is the only qualified person, and that the majority expenses, no matter how we go about building this out, the county will have to expend in order to get this thing built. And if we want to get it built in a short period of time, then we would recommend that we just follow through with this original plan.
How many cubic foot is the existing kiln now, Tim?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How many cubic feet is the existing or old kiln?
What's the size of the old kiln?
Oh, okay. The old kiln was 100 cubic feet. The new kiln is 200 cubic feet.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just like to, this is Gail Woody, Mr. Muth, and I just wanted you to know that appreciate this information. And I did a little bit of homework myself and talked to Jeff Marley at SEC. And this Preston Tolbert helped build their wood fire kiln out there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very well acquainted with him. And they had theirs done, I think it was in 2005. And also the quote that we're getting, I think is very reasonable considering the time that's transpired since that kiln and the amount that he's charging. So I feel pleased with that price as well.
Yes, you know, the cost of brick itself, those fire bricks has gone up about 4 times in the last 10 years. So I think it's a reasonable cost as well. And one of the points I wanted to make is that this is the only public access wood-fired kiln, certainly in Western North Carolina. I really don't know of any other ones even in the state. In fact, I Googled it this morning and there's only one that comes up, and that's ours. We typically work with Western, with SCC, UNC Asheville comes out on a very regular group basis. We have several groups one from South Carolina, a group of alumni from Northern Georgia that come up. So we really are providing this service to artists in a pretty wide regional area around here.
So, you mind if I kick in here?
Yes, go ahead, Tom.
So this is not this is a replacement
Yes, sir.
kiln. What is the age of the old one?
So the old one we finished in 2012, so it's about 9 years old. It was still serviceable, but these fire it up to 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can imagine it's pretty hard on the bricks after a while. This new kiln, I'm very confident that we could get at least 20 years of service out of it, perhaps more than that, but at least that much.
Okay. And then the old one was operated on the methane there, correct?
No, sir. The old one was fired strictly with wood, and also we have a ability to fire it with waste vegetable oil as well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and just so you know, Commissioner Stribling, wood-fired kilns produce a different finish on the ceramics.
Right.
So it's a very specific type of firing to get a result that artists want.
I see. Okay, that answers my question.
Okay. And as Mr. Adams mentioned, we're going to be locating this up at the back side of the existing SRC. That's going to give us a lot more room up there. These new kilns are going to be covered with carports. We'll have an area up there for wood processing and storage, also waste vegetable oil processing and storage. And it'll be more easily accessible for the artists as far as when they come in to be able to unload their work right there and get it into the kilns. And we already have electric run up to that area for lights and anything else that we might need up there. So I think it's an excellent location for these new kilns.
Ted, do you have anything to add to what's been stated?
Ted, I haven't been out this week. Have they demolished the old one?
Yes, the old one has already been demolished. That entire building is gone at this point.
And so if I understood correctly, Mr. Adams, you're stating that obviously this is built into the budget for this project ordinance. The funds are there to accomplish what has been presented. This is just an informational item, and unless there's additional comments or requested actions, there really is no other action going to be asked of the board.
No, you're correct.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about this project? Okay. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you. You all have a good day now. If you have any other questions, though, feel free to call me or email me. I'll be happy to walk through it however we need to.
Thank you, Tim.
You all have a good day now.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item of discussion is in regards to the indoor pool. There are multiple items for consideration by the board. We do have here today, or bringing in today, Rusty Ellis, our rec director, and we also have Chad Roberson, the principal architect for Clark Connection. Make sure Okay, so yeah, we do have Mr. Roberson on here also. I've asked these individuals to be here just so there's any questions for the architect and for Rusty. Couple things. This is something I've mentioned to the board at a previous report, but basically, in order for the project to move forward, there are multiple things that need to be brought before the board. One would be the resolution certifying the referendum election results, which I've given a copy of example wording of what will be in that resolution closed in your packets. All it really is certifying the election results. The second item that would be requested to be approved by the board is what's called a reimbursement resolution. What a reimbursement resolution does is allows the county to move forward and make expenditures on the project, but states and allows us to legally reimburse ourselves after we issue bonds or borrow money. And so that would be necessary for us to, if we're gonna spend money now, that we plan on replacing it later with bond versus. The next item is the proposed architect contract. And ultimately, the last item I'm gonna jump to, and we can go through the details of the architect contract too, if the board chooses to do so. I can tell you that this has been reviewed by myself and by the attorney, and it meets all of our standards. The last item is really just talking about what would be needed at the next meeting. And again, what I try to do in this last item is just basically describe what the upcoming cost would be for the board to move forward with the full project. And the upcoming cost would be the Clark Nexon contract, which is $1,460,000. Now that contract, even though more likely we'll issue bonds before we spend all those funds, the majority of those funds would be spent by the time we have to issue the bonds, meaning we can't issue the bonds until we actually go out to bid and get the actual cost of the project. And of course, as y'all are aware, the vast majority of funds in this type of contract is really in the development of the construction documents to actually go out to bid. There would be some ongoing costs such as survey and geotechnical exploration of about $22,488. And I would request to just throw a miscellaneous line in there in case there's some other surveying or other legal issues that would come up. So the requested budget amendment would be, our project ordinance amendment would be $1,487,488. And again, in order for this project to proceed forward, the board would need to adopt the resolution as stated before, certifying the referendum election results, the reimbursement resolution, a budget amendment in the amount of $1,487,488, and then vote to approve the architect contract. Just a reminder to the board, the timeline on this once. Chad, can you remind me, once this contract is signed, what's the timeline before we'd be going out to construction?
Yeah, construction would start let me look at we'd be bidding the project about March of 22, and then construction would start late or 1st of May of 22, a couple months after the bidding process.
So you got well over a year of design and construction documents and things like that.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, I have any questions.
Are there any particular questions from the board members about these documents and the timeline and all that before we get to the big question? Commissioner Woody, did I see a head nodding?
Yes, I've had some citizens ask me this question and I had no answer. So I'm going to share it with you. Why is it over a year before they can even put out a bid when we have paid for a lot of this? I mean, the site preparation, we were told was at a minimum because when it was originally built, the recreation center, the thought was that we would be able to have a pool in that area. And also a lot of work has been done with the planning. So why is it over a year?
So the design process, or the way that this proposal is set out, is we're set up with a schematic design.
I know.
Yes, sir.
Can you lean into your mic? Yeah, there you go.
Is that better? So the proposal set up in 3 different phases. One of them is schematic design. That's about a 90-day period. Design development, where we're basically expanding upon the advanced planning and the schematic design. That's another 90-day period. And then the construction document period is the longest duration. That's where we're actually putting together documents that will go out into the market and be bid upon by the different contractors in there. So these are are complex buildings with a number of systems and the aquatics components that are in there. So it takes quite a bit of time for us to put together the design documents to go out onto the street and the specifications. What we have completed thus far is really an advanced planning phase where we gathered program information from the various groups around the community and from Rusty and his staff, and then we put that into a programming document, which will then be the supporting documentation as we go through the remainder of the design processes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Any other questions? I can't see Commissioner Striblin because, Tom, do you have any questions?
Oh, sure.
Okay, well then the question that I have, I guess, for the board is, I know this is, well, let me ask Rusty. Rusty, do you have any comments? I notice the sun is shining where you're at right now. In fact, it's sort of overcast here.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's just a background. That's not where I'm at.
So pretty though.
No, I mean, I don't have any questions. I'm just excited for this to get started because I know a lot of people have voiced their opinion as well as the community to get this thing going because it's a long time coming. I just know a lot of people in this county is excited about this project. So.
Okay. So we've been presented the components that are necessary. I think Don has put up back on the screen the action that we would need to take, which are 4 items there at the bottom. To adopt the resolution certifying the referendum election results, adopt the reimbursement resolution, adopt the budget amendment in the amount of 1.4 million plus, and to vote to approve the contract with architect Clark Nexon. And those items are the 4 items that we would need to take action on for this project to officially move forward. Is there comfort level? Is there a comfort level of adding this to the next agenda to take action on, or do we want more time? So I'm just going to poll the board members and see what the feeling of the board is. So I'll start with Mr. Jones.
I say put it on the next agenda. The funding source that would be the general fund.
Mr. D. Okay. Commissioner Woody?
Yes.
Commissioner Striblin?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm agreeable. Well, let's go ahead and just plan to put this on the next agenda. If questions were to come up between now and then, we can always raise an objection or ask a question, but we'll go ahead and tentatively place it on the next upcoming agenda for the board to take action on. There again, we don't have to take action at that meeting. If another question comes up or if we all of a sudden decide we need some additional information, but at least we can go ahead and start the process of getting on the official agenda. Okay. All right. Well, thank y'all. Thank you, Rusty. I enjoy the sunshine there.
Thank you.
Guys, have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Rusty's supposed to be on the next one too. Did you leave? No, he's still there.
I'm still here.
We're trying to get rid of you.
I can leave.
I'm just kidding you, Rusty.
I'm just kidding too.
So the next item of discussion is in regards to the proposed Cactus Golf Cart. As you recall, this issue was brought before the board previously, and the board had indicated a positive response that wanted to potentially move forward with partnership with Vision Captures in regards to trying to get a golf park established in Captures. What I have enclosed in the package here is a proposed memorandum of understanding. This would be just a memorandum with Vision Captures, who would look to contribute or fundraise up to $50,000 to go towards this project. And ultimately, going back and forth and having conversations with Vision Captures, I believe for the most part, this complies or goes with what Vision Captures is willing to move forward with. except one point I do want to point out that was requested, and I have to find the specifics here, but in essence, I'll find it here and say I'll finish my thought. The original request from Vision Casters was to run our MOU with them in consonance with the lease agreement that we have up there for that property. And Rusty, do you recall how much we have left for that property? Will you give us a little background on the lease for the property that we're talking about? You may unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I believe that was a 40-year lease, and I think we're about 34, 35 years into that, if I'm not mistaken. I can look back and see for sure what the lease ends up at, but I'm sure there's at least over a 30-year lease on that property.
So how much do we have left on it?
Hold on one sec.
Okay, well, we haven't considered, do we have more than 10 years?
That lease was in September of 2004, and it is a. I thought I had it. It said July 1st of 44 is when it ends.
Who is it with? The technical, the official name?
Casters Valley Community Council.
Who actually owns a lot of that property up there with the field?
Correct. Yeah.
And so, so basically that lease goes through 2044. And so that's the only thing different than Vision Casters was asking for this agreement to flow along with that. That is a long time for a county government. Generally speaking, what I put in here is 10 years. And just it's our intention to maintain a dog park in Casters. But generally speaking, you start getting past 10 years, and that's a legal statement that exactly matches the situation. But generally speaking, with property, you get past 10 years with government, you start getting into, for example, can we lease more than 10 years at a time property?
Not without, not only there, just going to do the provisions that you were telling.
So the 10 years is not just a number. It's generally a standard amount of time that we use when we're dealing with real property. And so that's the only thing different in this agreement. And I would say that I recommend we just stay after 10 years, let the Casters community know that it's our intention to try to maintain a dog park for ever. It's just a matter of tying us into that particular location. I just wouldn't recommend doing that.
Questions from the board members concerning this proposed lease?
If I could interject also, I have talked with Paul and Rand that's taking care of this. They have told me they've already raised the full $50,000 already.
Good, well, that's good.
Yep.
There's definitely support for this in Casters.
Yes, ma'am.
So hearing that the money has been raised, and I don't hear any questions concerning the language that's been exhibited here in this memorandum, is there consensus then to go ahead and place this on the next agenda, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Striblin?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Deep? Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and place this one on the next agenda.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Next time discussion, we did follow through and went through the municipal grant process again this year. And basically, you do have included in the package 3 proposed grants. You do have from the town of Silva, you do have from Webster, and also Hillsborough. As clear as the board, I'm just going to see if you have any questions. They follow the rules in which requested. They limited it within $5,000 per municipality. And again, I'll do do whatever the board wants to. When we go over these individually, or do you have questions? How would you like to do it?
Do any commissioner have a question about the grant request or want to make a comment about a specific one in general? Mr. Jones says,
Make a comment, forwarded to the county manager earlier today, proposal in one of the companies submitted by the Webster, town for picnic tables. And, I noticed the cost of the picnic table for Hillsborough was significantly higher. And, I got a quote, a couple things. I got a quote for a lower price for the Webster, the same company that Webster contacted. And I think it was a total of 7 picnic tables. And to save at least a couple $1,000 in making the Hillsborough project more palatable for moving forward with. So I'd like maybe county manager to contact the towns and see if this is conducive to their plan.
So if you go back and look, just follow up, I believe the Hillsborough, you see the picnic, the tables, is that what we're talking about right here, the 1,100, where they're 1,100, little over 1,100 each. And then if I were to go back to, the Webster, I believe in their quotes is where you're saying they were 650. That's the
well, the picnic table, the cost of it was in that 4,000.
4 picnic tables provided, so it's still over about. You're correct. It is less than what they quoted us.
And it's the same gauge steel, both ADA accessible, and the metal got perforated metal punch steel, so that to me it's equal quality. I just you can save a little bit of money and make it easier to use.
Does anybody have an objection to any of these municipal grant requests? Are we okay with putting these on the next agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm hearing all yeses. So
Next item is the closed budget schedule. And really just looking at this, you see January 12th is, obviously we're having this initial conversation at the work session. It is proposed that the board schedule a budget retreat February 23rd, 2021. We probably got a little bit more discussion about location. We have been having this retreat at Impact, but if you recall that room, I'd have to see, first of all, they're allowing us to utilize this space, and then we also have to look in regards to making sure we had a large enough room to accommodate the board, and there may be other individuals that get invited in. So I think we'll just have to have some more conversations about that. And then also about whether or not there will be a meal served prior to that. Everything else is self-explanatory. Once you have your budget retreat, I'll hold a preliminary meeting with the staff. You'll see deadlines and nonprofit applications being disseminated March 1st. You'll look at some meetings called. We want to talk about revenues. We are going through a reval year this year. So there may be, I'm trying to set up for when we can start having those types of conversations. And then obviously you can see when March 31st nonprofit applications are due. And then April 13th is what we attempt to do is when all the requests for community finance, whether it be nonprofit departments, what we attempt to do is try to give a summary to the commissioner. It's a brief summary, it's about 4 or 5 page summary, just all equipment, personnel, any new program. It's really just kind of a cheat sheet of, so to speak, of just new requests and major requests coming to the board. And when you look at April 19th through the 30th, that's when Darlene and I end up meeting with all the departments. You'll see May 11th, which is the regular scheduled meeting. That's when we would basically just update the board on any new requests and then come back with a little bit more detail on capital requests. On May 18th is when I would submit the recommended budget to the board. May 20th, 21st is, generally speaking, we try to schedule a couple of days for groups to come speak before the board. And then ultimately after that, June, in the month of June, that's when the board's really trying to, I would always recommend when you're looking at your calendars in May and June to try to keep them open a little bit, because that's when, that's the time available for you to have special call meetings as little as much as you want to go over and review the budget prior to adoption. And then propose to adopt the budget June 15th.
Any questions about this proposed calendar? I'd recommend that we take an opportunity to look at it and compare it to your own personal calendars, just to make sure that those dates fit. Sometimes we have events or things come up that we want to make sure that we're not in conflict with. If you see something that is a conflict, let us know as soon as possible so we can go ahead and make some adjustments. Are you asking, Mr. Manager, for us to adopt this calendar?
Yes, sir. This everybody.
Okay. All right. So look at your calendars between now and the next meeting, and then we'll just adopt this. Go ahead and please get it set down and for the public to know.
Next item discussion. This is something that's been discussed a little bit with the individual commissioners, but I wanted to just propose or bring up the topic of potential fire and rescue bonuses. But this bonuses that we could be discussing today would come out of the COVID-19 funds that were discussed previously, where you've given county employee bonuses. And so what I wanted to do was to just, in general terms, see if there's an interest from the board. And we also put together some numbers to tell you about how much money we've been talking about. The general concept I would throw out there would be to try to look at the rosters for the fire departments and the rescue squads, and to just try to come up with an amount of money, a bonus, for lack of better terms, to just recognize their service during the COVID-19 time. And so, Mr. Chairman, however you wish to proceed forward with this conversation, that's a general start of the topic. We do have numbers based upon using rosters for the fire departments and the rescue squad. Obviously, if we go away from that, then that will have to be just future conversation that we bring back to it.
Okay. Yeah, I think the conversation, there has been, like I said, some conversation after we did the bonuses for county employees and for our school officials, teachers and staff, that we might want to also consider looking at our fire and rescue volunteers who are on the front lines dealing with this pandemic and are responding to calls, and in some way just show them that we do appreciate their service, and it is a hard time and they're volunteering to perform these tasks. So I think the numbers that y'all presented, was it 500?
Yeah, so we looked at light package, if I'm going to pass it out.
Yeah, please do.
Basically on the roster that we have presented to us, and that includes activation. It would cost the $500 to cost us $159.
How much did we have remaining? We had a little over $495.
That give us 350-ish for whatever COVID situation needs to be addressed.
And so, really discussing this out, it gets, when you start trying to go through and figure out who are we talking about, there has been a lot of conversation held with staff and some other folks that are familiar with the process of developing rosters and things of that nature. And at the end of the day, the conclusion was the simplest way to look at this would be to really base this upon the rosters. And so if you're on the roster, then you would qualify and then base it upon active members on the roster. I believe we would have to just work with the fire departments and the rescue squads to make the determination of defining the active member portion of that. Again, as you go through, just a lot of conversation about it, you were trying to distinguish between, let me back up. So for example, you do have people that serve on multiple entities. So we would also make this a one-time bonus. If we propose it would be one time, so no double dipping. And you serve on a rescue squad in the fire department, you still only get one bonus. Even though we appreciate those services. But the idea being is to try to identify people on the roster, provide the bonus for them.
Is there interest to do this? Let me ask that question.
You work for the county, you're on the fire department, you get two.
If you're on that roster,
a civil fire department used to, we had 25 members. You know, if that's still true.
I'd say they have more than that now. I don't know what the number is.
For civil, how much is it for, limit guys? No, for fire department.
They're paid employees, but we've got people. I see. All right.
Why would we not include them?
We are.
Oh, okay.
we are.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they're
That
still
was
working
kind of
on.
opposite of what I thought.
Yeah.
And so-
I think Boston has 32. I don't- It varies from department to department. 31, okay, 31.
So what started happening was when you start going down a line of pay versus comp, when you start going down that discussion, it's there's not a perfect answer there because there's a good argument there that even if you're part of the roster, that there's been times that you've gone and not been paid, right? You might find a handful of people that may not apply to, but the reality is that even if you take, say, the county personnel, but you know, they get paid during the week, but then they probably gone out a
I
week.
didn't ask you, that's good.
No, I'm just trying to think that it gets, so there's been a lot of conversation. That's why I simply go back to say, I think I set the conversation for almost an hour on this and fall back around, but the fairest and simplest way is to just look at the rosters and say, we appreciate you being on the roster at the bottom.
Does this seem appropriate? Is this something we want to do? I guess this is what we need to instruct staff to put this on the agenda or not to move forward.
My feeling is that
Other
just,
questions? Yeah,
oh,
go ahead,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Weeks.
Well, this is more of a comment, but just as we, and I think Commissioner Deeds was very eloquent about this, because we're honoring those who were bus drivers, custodians, cafeteria workers, as well as teachers. I think it's important that we recognize the extra efforts that these individuals are making for our county and our citizens as well. So I think across the board is a good thing.
You can't check, you can't pick and choose or
No, that's
with the capital at the moment.
Okay, so the current recommendation is to $500 per volunteer, one-time payment, only each individual can only receive one payment. So if there are multiple members of various departments that only receive one payment, that would come out of the COVID funds. And that's something we could take up at the next item. Commissioner Jones, I'll start with you again. Okay with putting this on the agenda? Commissioner Striblin, you okay with this going on the next agenda? Okay, I think that's a yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Deeds? Commissioner Woody?
Yes.
Okay, yes as well. So y'all will go ahead and prepare that for our next meeting.
Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to request a raise.
Okay, let's take about a 5-minute recess. Tom, you'll hang in with us, or we'll be back about 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Do you want,
Oh, wow. You stay out of my, you stay out of my notes.
I did touch the notes. Okay, we'll go ahead and come back to order. We are having some technical difficulties with our sound and video. And of course, it don't help wearing masks either, but we're trying to work through some of that. I'll just remind everybody, the microphone is here where the camera is, and just try to speak as loud as
I can't hear a word y'all are saying.
Can you not hear us?
Only if I stick the phone to my ear.
Yeah, we're trying to work on it, maybe beyond today to fix it, but I appreciate you bearing with us.
Tom, did this make a difference?
I had my cell phone at 100%, and from what we did, I went down to 19%, so I put it back on the charger. Now I don't have my speaker, my headphones.
Does this help any, Tom? I look toward the camera.
I'll tell you, this is the last time I'm gonna do a Zoom meeting. I'm gonna make sure I'm there next time. I don't like doing this.
well, I feel bad for him. If we have to change the time, maybe. Whatever.
Okay, let's go ahead and try to move forward.
Okay, so next item of discussion is in regards to a request before the board to do a hiring policy revision.
Okay. I think I'm gonna have to put my headphones back on.
Okay.
Hold on just a second. All right, Brian.
Okay, we're ready to go. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Don.
Okay. Next item of discussion is a request before the board to revise our hiring pay policy. This is a revision from the original one that was submitted out last week. Angie had, if you looked online last week, we've added a few details that weren't last week, but you should have the final version that we're requesting. Basically, what we're asking for is for the board to make some exceptions or make some changes directly related to the hiring of nurses and physician extenders. They're basically nurses. They're basically our physicians. They can do things such as prescribe medication and things of that nature. So if you will flip, this is our pay policy. This is a policy that was adopted by the Board of Commissioners that allows for the county manager, the human resources director, the department head, and the finance officer to try to hire people at a step or at a pay rate that's reflective of their experience. So before I leave the first page, you can see we have a definition of what's direct experience. And when we initially looked at direct experience, we were only giving people, we were giving them credit for direct experience in local government only. So if you remember, the sheriff came to the board and had a discussion that when he tries to recruit from either Cherokee or he tries to recruit from Western Carolina University, that ultimately he's not able to offer them higher salaries based upon experience. So if you look at page 1, you can see that law enforcement section was added to allow the sheriff to come in and give credit, years of service credit for people who work in non-local government entities. If you flip the page, you can see, really it must be starting at the bottom. Yep. All right, if you flip the page, you can see the next 2 sections is what's being requested to be added. Yeah, excuse me. If you jump down to the public health registered nurse section, and then the public health physician extender section. Let me get it online here. So what we're talking about here is where on page 2, it talks about the public health nurses and the public health physician extender 2 position. And so in essence, what we're trying to do is we're trying to, right now, when we hire a nurse, we cannot give that nurse, if they say come from the hospital, we're not able to give that nurse one-to-one credit for their experience, meaning they could have been a nurse for 5 years at the hospital, but they would be counted as indirect experience and only be given like a 1 to 2 step increase, or that would be the only thing we could offer. So what we're trying to do is recognize that we're trying to recruit nurses out of the private field, and we're trying to open up the policy so that we can give a one-to-one. If a nurse is coming from the hospital with 5 years experience, we can at least offer them a step 5, 10 years experience, step 10, things of that nature. The request is also extending over to public health physician extender 2. And again, basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to give credit for those individuals who have private experience so that it'll help us recruit better. And then the final thing that I'm asking the board to do, and this is not necessarily reflected in what's in front of you, but I'd like to talk to you about this. If you go to the next to the last page, which will be,
Yeah, we got it.
Indirect experience.
yeah, it's right here, below indirect experience. It says the paragraph says the county manager has the authority to approve up to step 12. I am not only am I asking that you allow for us to give direct experience for nurses and for public health physician extenders, I'm also asking the board to suspend that limitation to the county manager for these recruitments only. Right now, I can only offer up to step 12. If we were trying to offer more than a step 12, then it would come back to the board. But what's happening is we are needing to advertise, and we're in a very competitive market these days. And I need an ability to look past step 12 in this conversation and potentially go up to even step 15 and step 20. I would be happy to report to the board if we had to, I have no problems after the fact reporting to the board what's been done, but I'm just trying to open up more mechanisms that allow us to recruit. Currently, right now, we out of 6 nurses, out of the 6, 1 is the supervisor. Okay, so you technically have a supervisory nurse and 5 other nurses. We currently only have 3 out of those 6 filled. Okay, so 1 of them is a supervisor, so you really have 2 working nurses out of 5 and then supervisor, but 3 out of the 6 is filled. We have just seen a rash between November, December, really December, and now here in January, a rash of resignations that's dropped us down to, out of those 6 positions, we have 3 filled. Out of those 3 filled, 1 is currently out. They will be coming back for medical reasons, but they will be coming back. Technically, we got 2 working nurses right now. Come February 1st, we'll get back up to 3, but we're trying to open up so that we can start advertising. Allowing me to go above step 12 will allow us to advertise higher rates, a bigger part of the range. And in that way, we just need to get applications in. It's what we're attempting to do. We have been advertising for one of the vacant nurses since November, and we're just not receiving applications at this point. So one of the strategies here is if we're allowed to give more credit for experience, we are going to target the hospital and private physicians and so forth. We started talking about strategies that in the advertisement, we are going to specifically state, if the board allows us to do this, we are specifically going to state that we're going to give one-to-one credit for these private experience. We're just needing to get applications in, and these are things that we're attempting to do so. And then ultimately, excuse me, Ultimately, by going back and suspending, allowing me to go above step 12, hopefully we'll be able to get those applications in. So we've got 3 out of the 6 nurses at this point filled. So we got 3 vacancies, and we've just heard that we got a resignation. We have two my brain's going south now. We're starting meeting. Public health physician extender 2 positions. We have 2 of those positions available in Jackson County. We have just now had 1 resignation.
What is a health extender?
It is
Nurse practitioner, isn't it?
It's a practitioner, nurse practitioner. It's basically, again, it's a much higher level of nurse. It's pretty much our equivalent to our physician. It's a person when you go in that actually can prescribe medications you need, and is at that level that can do those types of things. I can't get any more technical than that really, other than.
Mr. Beck, is that what he is?
Yes, that's what he is. Lewis Beck is one of those.
And so that is the reason I'm also asking to include the public health physician extender 2 position, nurse practitioner, into this conversation so that we also can start advertising more of the range, hiring range is what we're trying to do so that we can get applications in for that position too. Now, I can tell you the health physician extender position, that's something back in 2016, this board, the Board of Commissioners drastically increased that. We feel like we're going to get applications in for that position. The individual leaving, they had an excellent opportunity at Western and they just couldn't get up. But we feel like we will get some applications in for the extender, and then hopefully we'll start getting applications in for the nurses too.
Got a question,
Okay,
a little off subject. Is it possible to use COVID funds as a bonus, hiring bonus for these individuals?
Well, I think we can, anything's on the table right now. I think what we're going to attempt to do is let's just try to get the salaries to get them to apply.
That's a good idea. I mean,
Yeah, signing bonus might be an incentive. Would that be contingent then on them staying a certain amount of time?
Who's that for? Get out. I
Yeah,
was thinking the same thing, Mark.
great minds.
We need to get some nurses,
Yes.
whatever we have to pay them almost.
Yeah.
But as far as allowing you to do that, and give them these time on time they work, and give them a bonus or whatever, I think it would be, I ain't gonna think it. Surely we need these people. We need them now. We don't need we need to make it as appealing as we can, and something that maybe would allow us to get some people quick,
So,
if that's possible.
Yes.
so I think stuff like that's on the table, but I think ultimately getting the salaries advertised where we get the applications in first, and then at the end of the day, that's where we'll just see if our current policy works, great. If it doesn't, then we're gonna have to have those types of conversations about how do we get them to accept the job. I think right now, what we're determining, the limitation of why they're not applying is because we're limiting ourselves to the range that we're putting in the newspaper. I think if we, and then Shelley has also stated that they're aware, it's known how we give credit for experience. And that's why in our advertising strategy, we're going to start telling people we're giving you a 1-to-1 credit. I mean, we're going to pay you directly through your experience. And these are things, if you'll just give us an opportunity to do that, then let's just see what applications we can get in. And then
I'm all for anything we can do
Yes.
to get some nurses.
Yes.
any other questions about what's being requested?
No, sir.
Okay, let's go ahead then and add this to the agenda.
So, Mr. Chairman, I do have one other, it's not specifically stated on this agenda, but it really relates to this. So I'm also looking for the ability, authorization to move forward with some part-time line items, okay? Part-time line items are going to be related to the operations of COVID COVID vaccination, how we're operating the health department, all of this. We're talking about trying to move quickly. Well, this is a hiring process. We'll move through by the time you advertise, get applications in and so forth. That's a process. There are certain areas we need to try to start getting individuals in now. So for example, if you recall before, I discussed that it was opened up for paramedics that they're able to administer the vaccination. We talked about that last time. And then the paramedics are going to be helping with this mass vaccination clinic Friday. Well, as we continue to have these conversations, we started thinking, well, wait a minute. We have openings in our health department now. Could we bring in people like paramedics on a part-time basis to assist in this area? And so as we've been having these conversations, we know we do have paramedics that are interested from Harris and also the Glenville Cash Rescue Squad. They're interested to come work for Jackson County on a part-time basis, okay? And then it's not for Jackson County, it's going to be working for the health department. And then what that does is it gives the health department access to medically trained individuals relatively quickly when needed in order for them to walk in and be of benefit to them. So it's that type of part-time assistance that we're trying to look for. The next type of, and this stuff can be COVID monies that can be used for this. Other part-time assistance that we're looking for is, I'm also looking to have just a part-time administrative type of assistant. We talked a little bit about volunteers before, and we are trying to work down the path. We are going to have a full report to the board from our emergency management coordinator and our health director our next meeting, just so you know. They just requested a week. They needed a week to get some things in place. Otherwise, they just feel like they could give you a full appropriate report. But other things that I'm looking to do when we talk about administrative part-time help is trying to bring in people that could be immediate benefit as it relates to having administrative experience related to the medical world. Okay. And so what we're attempting to do is to go through and if they're out there, retired individuals, things of that nature, open it up so that we can bring them in and pay them on a part-time basis. And then the final thing that the health director is looking at is she's also looking to find retired nurses. She is researching right now, and if she can access retired nurses, we're also trying to bring them in on a part-time basis. So in the interim, while we're attempting to move forward with the hiring strategies for these nurses and so forth, we're trying to come up with ideas of how to fill the gaps and how to do it quickly with experienced people. And so what that requires is two things. One is for me to be able to create part-time staff like I just described to you so that they can come in and hire these folks, that we can hire these folks to be immediate help. And then two is honestly, we have a personnel policy that has a hiring procedure within that policy. I am also looking for the ability to not have to flow through that, meaning I'm not looking to advertise for part-time paramedics. I'm not looking to advertise, but we have, what's happening right now is we're getting paramedics that are identified as interested. I'm not looking to advertise for that. I'm looking for the ability to just go ahead and put them on part-time so they can be used. I'm also looking for the ability to move forward and do part-time if we find individual nurses or retired nurses to contract with them to move forward and contract with them. And I want to throw this out for discussion, but these are things that we're discussing now that we believe meaning the health director and her staff and the emergency management coordinator, that would immediately start helping us potentially. It's not going to be weeks from now. It'll be next week. We might start getting benefit from this.
Could we, I think it's been stated here already, I think we recognize the urgency of trying to have staff in place, individuals in place to help with vaccinations. We talked about this last time, to be able to fill out papers, administer shots, monitor people, whatever's needed. Is there a way that we could draft a document, Heather, that, I mean, while we're under a state of emergency, that we exempt and pretty much sort of bypass our standard normal procedures on hiring and give the manager the flexibility to move forward? That this is COVID related, it's a pandemic, we're authorizing this kind of action. Is that something that we could do?
Yes, it would be an amended declaration, but we could do that, yes.
What's others' thoughts
I'm
about?
for doing that,
Yes,
and I'm for, allowing all the things that you talked about to go forward, as long as it's, in accordance with what we can do, and that the health department director, is fully in line with it and agrees to it and whatever.
So is that something y'all can draft up to have ready for us at this next meeting to give the authority to execute this, move forward?
Absolutely. I request on that, if there's.
Or do we need to do it today? Do we need to take action today? I mean,
If there's a consensus of the board, we'll start moving with this.
okay,
And
we'll formally adopt it.
formally adopt it Tuesday, but if I have opportunities between now and Tuesday,
Go
I
for it.
may ask you to do some things in retroactive action.
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
mean,
That's
it's-
fine.
Anybody, any objections to that?
I just commend Mr.
Tom, I can't hear you, it's muted.
Sorry about that. Okay, I got a phone call from Wayne Smith last night. He's offered one of his buildings for administrating the vaccine if we need, if there's not enough areas to administer. So he has offered one of his buildings if we need so.
Okay. Are you okay with giving the manager this authority right now during the pandemic to move forward immediately?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
Mr. Adams and I had a conversation right before this meeting, and there might be a time, and I'm totally comfortable with doing what he's requesting, but there could be a time in the next 6 weeks when Jackson County gets 10,000 doses, and we need to be, that keyword proactive, and have this in place and trained, and be able to jump on that and say, yes, we'll take 10,000, because other counties might be behind us and won't have the folks in place to accept this. You don't know what's coming down the pipe a month from now.
Yeah. I agree. Kelly and I both last night were talking after we spoke with Wayne, and pretty much kind of came up with the same thing that Don was talking about, is getting retired nurses and retired doctors to see if maybe they might just donate their time.
well, and I did talk to Todd Dillard today and thanked him for what they're doing with that emergency number and all, and offered to volunteer to take down information from the phone lines. And he said he's fine this week, but he may need me next week. So he's willing to take some volunteers as well to help with just the logistics of collecting information to schedule the vaccine shot.
And I have, and my wife has.
Yes.
I also understand there've been talks from Western Carolina University about maybe being able to use some health students. That is in progress right now with the health department through them. And I was told that there will be contact with SCC. I mean, we got supposed to be one of the greatest institutions out there in the country as
That's
far as
right.
training health students or whatever. So a whole lot of thought going on by a lot of people. And I think the whole process is, the key of it is everybody's concerned about our citizens in the county, not as much about themselves. And I think that's a good thing.
So it sounds like you've got full authority of backing of the board to move forward. So with rapid speed.
Okay.
And we'll retroactive if we need to by next week.
Thank you. And just, on the tail end of that, you'd mentioned that, again, I don't want to get in front of Todd and so forth. They're going to be able to report numbers to you and everything. They'll have a mass vaccination under their belt and everything Tuesday. There's just going to be a lot more information to the board Tuesday, but I'm with you that the Emergency Operations Center was open yesterday. And as of this morning, they had either somebody online or they've received phone calls for over 700, almost 800 people. They are receiving phone calls from Swain County, Transylvania County, Macon County. They're receiving phone calls from Jackson County, Georgia, Mississippi. There are a lot of people in this region, in this nation, that are just craving information or access. And ultimately, I appreciate them right now, who we have over there. The majority is our rec department. Our rec director is online here with today. I walked in and he was answering phone calls, so we're about to start rallying. This is discussed at last meeting. I'm about to start rallying our existing employees, and hopefully Todd and I, Mr. Diller and I are talking about how do we, I believe we're going to need this EOC answering these phones for a while. It's not going to be a 1 to 2 week thing, so we've got to start strategizing how we're going to keep this man for the next couple of months. And these are all things that
As of right now, what's the time that they're taking these calls?
it is standard time.
Well, see, I think somewhere we need to get away from that too.
And we, Todd,
If we can get enough people to take calls to 10 o'clock at night or something.
Mr. Diller and I did have, I absolutely agree with you, Commissioner Deeds. And so what we need to do is shore up the main hour for the next month. And once I shore that up, then I can start expanding the hours. What I don't want to do is burn out the handful of people we got working right now.
No, you don't want to do that.
And so I absolutely agree
We got
with
to
you.
get away from this thing where people's call. One lady there called yesterday and she had started at 8 o'clock and she'd been on the phone for about 2 hours and couldn't get hold of anyone. But the day before she'd been on about 3 hours and it was about her mother. And, you know, every one of us got calls like that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to the point where we can lessen that.
Absolutely, Commissioner Deeds, we're working on exactly what you're stating.
You had in this request, step 12, and you alluded to step 15 or even 20.
Yes, sir.
Do we want that to be the language that Ms. Baker's going to put together for us? What step? I'm not familiar enough with the numbers to know what we're talking about. In step 12 to 12.
And just remember, I'm doing it within the policies that you're adopting. So, you know, the more, you know, honestly, we're talking about years of experience. So if you get somebody with 15 years of experience, then that allows me to do step 15. And so ultimately, interesting enough, I'll have a conversation with a couple of you afterwards. Our current system matches up actually fairly well to, unfortunately, some that we've lost. But I feel like if you open up to step 20 to me or so, then that's going to empower us to really have some real conversations with our new application. So I'll leave it to the board. I would ask for at least the 20.
Well, 20's fine. I mean, go whatever you need. Now's the time. Let's do it.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Next is E.
I will turn that over to Ms. Baker.
All right, Ms. Baker's going to highlight 5E, recommendation modification of meeting rules. I think this is something we've sort of talked about before.
Yes, it is. And before I start, I'm going to tell you, I was texting with Brian Nations in IT about the sound, and he said that he's monitoring it on YouTube. He said when you talk into the microphone on your desk, that's when the sound is best on the system. So all of you with the microphones on your desk, you can talk in the desk. I'm going to try and talk towards your microphones. So at the organizational meeting, Commissioner Deeds brought up a good point, asking about how can you put something in your rules and regulations about meeting attendance, attending meetings. And we had that discussion then that legally there's not a lot that you can do, but you could certainly put something in your rules and show what your expectations are. And so I did some research just to see what other counties have done. Most counties don't have anything, but a few did. And the few that did have it in their rules and procedures, so it was very appropriate when you mentioned it, because that's where they have it. And so I kind of combined some of what I saw out there with what I heard you say at the organizational meeting, and came up with this Rule 3, number C, which is highlighted here as a way to address it in your rules. And again, it doesn't back you into a corner since there's not much you can do, but it does express your intent and expectations.
Okay, well, I thank staff for working on this, Heather, to pull this together. I think it accomplishes what we were asking for.
It sounds good.
Any comments from the board? Any other questions about what we're being asked? This would be based on what our recommendation and our request. We would have to add this to the agenda to modify these suggested rules and adopt this amendment.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any objection? Okay. All right. Hearing none, we'll add this to the agenda then. The next item 5F, let me just preface this by saying, I know this has been a topic in our community for some time. I've heard other governing bodies, I think both the Village of Forest Hills, the town of Webster, the town of Silva. I'm not sure, has Dillsboro taken action, is it? Anybody aware of Dillsboro?
They have not, and I'm still waiting.
Okay, all right. So at least 3 municipalities within the county of Jackson have taken action on a resolution that originated with the Eastern Band of the Cherokees, where they adopted a resolution at the Cherokee Council House on October 29th, 2020. This was resolution number 324. It was unanimously approved by their council, signed by the chief. And while the resolution does not specifically say that it's requesting Jackson County to take action, it's implied, I'm assuming. And so this is really the first time I have had an opportunity to officially see the resolution as adopted by the tribal government, which in essence is asking that we support an effort to have the name of Jackson County changed to Jackson County, but instead of honoring the former president, Andrew Jackson, that in essence, it would shift the honor to former Chief Walter Jackson of the Eastern Band. Ms. Baker, would you offer some thoughts about, obviously, we all know in North Carolina, county governments are an extension of the state. Our legislature is the one that created Jackson County, and it was a legislative action. I did take time to look back at the history of Jackson County, the book I know that was published, I guess, what was that, in the late 80s, here in 1987, I believe. Max Williams and several worked on. There was a chapter in there about the formation of our county, and it sort of chronicled the history of how our county came to be. And it is referenced in there in the legislative action that it was named for the former president who had recently passed, I think, during that time frame, just a few years prior to Jackson County becoming an official county. There's a long history about why counties were created and the whole mentality and the philosophical debate that took place in our nation during that time. And so the county was named after Jackson, who was a Democrat, and the county seat was then chosen to be named after Daniel Webster, former senator, statesman, Secretary of State, I believe, who was a member of the Whig Party. So it was tried to find a balance and a compromise, and so that was what was put forward in the legislature, and it's how we got the town of Webster and the county of Jackson. So that's where we're at today, but going back to, I guess, my question to Ms. Baker is, this obviously would be action have to be taken by the legislature. Would that be accurate?
I have not researched this, because this is my first time seeing the forward resolution as well. The only, in the statute, there's a statute that designates each county by name, and that's really all that's there in the statute. So I'm not sure, but if we'd like to think that.
I would be interested, at least having staff do some research and let Ms. Baker come back to us and tell us what is possibilities, because, you know, I don't want to take action on something and we don't even know what we can and can't do to begin with.
When Jeremy Wilson, who works for Chief Steed, first approached me with this idea, I did mention to Heather about it, and then I called the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners and talked to their legal counsel, Amy Basin. And so she thought it was, she didn't have any idea herself and said she'd look into it. And I shared this with Heather, and I think Heather was gonna, like you said, you know, maybe follow up somewhere with her. But she said, she got back to me and said that there was no precedent for any county changing a name, but there was also no statute specifically designating the process for naming a county. Therefore, she felt like there was nothing legally that would stand in our way. Now, that was her just cursory evaluation of that situation.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see, because I also Googled just on the computer last night to see, has there been a county change its name in North Carolina? And I couldn't find any reference to a county ever changing its name. I was hard pressed to find any example nationally of a local government, municipal or county, that changed its name. I know from a historical perspective, and I think we talked a little bit about coming into this meeting, at least four members or three members of this board have some degrees in history, and I know we have a passion for history, most all of us. And Commissioner Dietz, I know, living in the northeastern part of the county, same area that I reside, you know, community names have a strong sense of place in our county. And the community I live in now is called Willits, named after an entrepreneur who came here from New Jersey, who was a logger, had a logging company. A.J. Willits, I've got a photo of him. But prior to his name, my community was named Alice. And I've always heard it was after what they called Aunt Alice Gunner. But here again, I don't know why the community name changed or who just took it upon themselves to change the name of the community. And I mean, have you heard those stories? I've always heard it was called Alice. You look back at some of yeah, and then all of a sudden it changed. So, I mean, it does happen in history. Things change, community names change, areas change. But, you know, we're being asked to undertake potentially a pretty significant venture. So I think it would be good to have some historical reference to it and put it into perspective as we consider this request coming to us from the tribal government. Other thoughts or comments?
Well, I think I made a comment. The tribe had reached out to me as far as the fact that I represent District 1, and the qualified boundary part of that is in District 1. And I said that I felt, out of respect for their request to us, and the fact that they were the original inhabitants of what we now call Jackson County, it's I think, just a natural and honorable thing to consider. And it would honor someone who was born and raised in this area and served, from everything I've heard, served the tribe as chief in an honorable way as well.
Any other thoughts or comments?
I think we ought to look at it real strong.
Okay.
If there's no reason to be found, I'd be doing this. I have been reading this last few nights about the removal of the Cherokee and some of the things that happened to them and the settlers coming in here. Solly and he and his two elder sons being executed for fighting for the land here that they'd owned all their life and things of that nature. And the reservation is in so much in Jackson County. I think it'd be a great tribute to what has happened to the Cherokee for us to do that. And being it doesn't really change the name, but it changed kind of the purpose of the name and what it stands for.
Okay.
But I think it'd be good for Heather to find out, we'll blame her. No, I think we got names of Cherokee. You know, there's different Indian tribes with, there are different counties with Cherokee names in the state.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, there's a, and if you look at
that's not a Cherokee name, it's just.
a map of just our western North Carolina region, it's full of Cherokee names and names from different, different walks of life and different points in our history. So any other comments or questions about it before we move on? This is just a topic.
Speaking of history, is there any way to show upon the screen the third lines 35 through 38?
Come on up there.
Chief Jackson, his history.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Tom.
I like history too. And history is history, and it shouldn't be changed, in my opinion. Same thing with the statue. So I'm not for it. I think it should be left the way it is.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and of course today's not a vote. We're just
Right.
introducing the topic for discussion, but I do appreciate your comments and sharing how you feel about it. Okay, Commissioner Jones, is there something you wanted to reference here?
Mr. Adams has pulled it up, and that's lines 35 through 38 of Resolution 324.
Okay, and that describes Chief Jackson's accomplishments, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before we move on? And we'll wait to hear back from our.
I'll say one thing about the Cherokee, a lot of them don't realize. Probably there's no group of people in this county and in the country that has served this country more than them. And I can't explain exactly why, but it's unreal the number of people on the reservation, percentage-wise, that served in the military.
Yes.
And it's just, it become a thing that's passed down from family to family that you serve. And I think that's a great tribute to them. You could almost think sometimes they felt like they were treated wrong, and I'm not going to take part, but they have fought to preserve this country, probably percentage-wise as much as any group or more.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll move on. Like I said, this was just today giving us a chance to introduce this topic formally and give us a chance to direct staff to do some legwork for us, and then we'll take this item up in the future with further discussion. I'll go ahead, Mr. Adams, while I'm at it, just go ahead and jump into this next one. 5G, the plaque inscription. Unfortunately, we do not have something to produce today to present to the board to talk about. Commissioner Woody and I have been meeting and talking about this. We're very close to having something in writing, and we hope to send it out to you by email to start taking a look at so that we can have a follow-up meeting on this. But I think what we're attempting to do is to very simply state what the purpose of the monument was, some fact-driven data on the monument, on the plaque that would be inscribed, you know, the dates of date of dedications and so forth, what the purpose is. And then I really like, and this is Commissioner Woody's idea, it comes all the way down to the very bottom with the simple statement of our informal national motto, the one that in the very beginning it's inscribed on a lot of our documents. It's on the Great Seal, E Pluribus Unum, which is the Latin phrase out of many one, trying to pull our nation back together, pull our nation into one, uniting us. So we're working on that document, and hopefully have that out to you that we can sort of put this to rest in the final weeks ahead. Commissioner Deeds.
Not having anything to do with that.
Okay, that's fine.
If you see some of the FBI and whatever, some of the things that's come out in the last couple of 3 days, and they warn that maybe us having problems at the Capitol again. And these are the 50 state capitals, maybe. And even some of that directive that I've seen is, they mentioned courthouses. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very sure that our sheriff is very aware of that. And I'd hope we would have no problem maybe on migration there or whatever. I think we ought to be super ready.
Absolutely. Be on a state of awareness.
Well, and I want to say that I think we've expressed this before, but our law enforcement has done a wonderful job throughout the protests that we did have here throughout the summer. And I feel so pleased that we did not have any arrests. We had no physical assaults. Those, I think, speak highly of not only our law enforcement, but our citizens as well, who some were expressing strongly their views, but they did not resort to violence. And I just want to commend our community for that.
Amen.
Very much so. Any other items? I know it's not on the agenda. It says other items, but we always try to open it up at the end to see if there are any other items that we need to talk about while we're in session, in a work session. Commissioner Striblin, I know you any parting things that you need for us to talk about? We may have lost him.
I keep muting it because believe it or not, I'm inside of the Tractor Supply building right now.
Okay.
That we're getting built, and I've got a Traco loading me, a skid steer, and my dump truck running, so I keep muting it so you guys don't have to hear that noise. So sorry about that, but no, I'm good for today.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. Anything else from the others? Okay. We'll go ahead and adjourn then. Do I have a motion that we adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Be careful.
Okay, see y'all.
We couldn't get a Cracker Barrel. We got a Tractor Supply. It's about as good.
Cracker Barrel.